Are you winking? Did you wink? You had like an internal wink, right?
No, this is my wink.
Hello, everyone. Oh, it's so good to be back. Welcome to another episode of Door to Door. I am joined here by my esteemed colleagues, Chris Connolly, Laney Mays. You've been holding down the fort, man. Doing a great job, you guys. Doing some great book chats and great author interviews, and you guys are amazing. And I'm very lucky. We are also very lucky to have with us today Gabe Barillas, HarperCollins sales rep and all-around cool guy. Hey, Gabe.
What's up? How are you guys?
We're happy to have you here. You are such a wonderful book talker, and every time we have sales conference and the reps come in or launch or whatever it is, I can't keep them straight. I've only been doing this for 33 years. But when we sit and talk and listen really to sales reps, to the field reps talk about books, it's on another level. And I'm just not kidding. It's just so good. You know, whether we're sitting in a conference room or we're in a hotel ballroom in Florida, or wherever we are, when you guys chime in, I listen. Tons of us listen. I don't know, it's very earnest, and you're all such deep readers and wide readers. And so I thought what would be kind of cool is to occasionally have a sales rep on to talk a little bit about what they do and talk about the books that they're loving. And we had Mary Beth Thomas on, who started off the whole thing. And she was wonderful and gave an overview of what she does and the books that she's loving. And it was a lot of fun. And so today we have Gabe with us, Gabe Barillas. So Gabe, thank you so much. Thank you for being such a fabulous book talker.
It's when you read a lot of books, that's what you like to do, is talk about books. There's nothing better than when you finish a book or a movie, the same thing. It's just like, have you read it? Have you read it? Because I need to talk to somebody about it. So it's there's a lot of conversations, and rare is the person in publishing that is not a big reader or a passionate reader. We got fast readers, we got slow readers, but there's a passion involved. So I think we like talking about things that excite us. And when you read a really good book, we were just talking about John Boyne, Love's Invisible Furies yesterday, and it was like such a great book. We were talking. Did one of these things for a bookstore, one of my local bookstores, and you just get caught up. We spent like 10 minutes talking about John Boyne all of a sudden, pushing more Random House books like they needed. But it's such a great book. It's such a great novel. So,
but that's the cool thing, though, is that it's like it overflows. It overflows.
I got a couple of requests this morning for books I talked about, Mary Jane and Willie Vlouten. So I got a couple of requests for both killer authors coming out right now that are available today.
How exciting is that? Those two books, those two authors. The three of us are just bonkers about both of them. They're really, really so wonderful.
And the booksellers are reading the galleys, and librarians are reading the galleys. You can see where the infectious, and you read a good book, regardless of what house it is. You're always talking. You bring it up. We get a lot of galleys here. My wife does editorial work and works in a bookstore part-time at Diesel. I don't know if you knew that. She's working at Diesel part-time. So it's her favorite job. It's what she likes. She loves doing it. And so we get a lot of books in the house. It's disgusting, really, embarrassment of riches here.
I love that. That's so great. She is great. She's an author herself, and go back a long way, Deb.
20 years?
Ginsburg. Amazing.
20 years since Waiting.
Jeez.
True Confessions of a Waitress, if anybody's listening.
It's such a fabulous book.
It's a fun book. It's a good coming-of-age novel, memoir.
Yeah.
She's funny.
Waiting. Yeah. She's really funny. She's
funny. Heartfelt.
She's wonderful. She's wonderful. So, Gabe, I'm going to just do a quick reading of your bio so people have a little sense of who you are and where you are and what you do. So you started in 1987 and your anniversary is coming up in 6 more days, May 17th. You'll be at Harper.
May 17th, next week, 34 years at Harper. Longer than most Americans have been alive.
You beat me by a year. That's crazy, right? So, and you say you started as a minimum wage employee at Harper while finishing college, and you managed
At Romans was where I was,
at
at Romans
Romans.
bookstore.
And you managed a bookstore for them for 3.5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, they hired me in May. I was just turning 23, and
Jeez.
they hired me in May, and then in January they asked me to go manage one of their branch stores, which was a lot of fun. So it worked out. It worked out well for me.
Did you have to use the cash register?
Oh, I did everything, man. I
Oh,
used to
God.
run, especially when I managed the store. It's like you lift a lot of heavy boxes. You've got to ring people up. In the old days where we didn't have ISBNs. It was just a department number, and
Oh, yeah.
so that was cool. You didn't have to type in all those ISBNs before scanners, kids.
We were Department 361. Just put that on a whole bunch of college exam requests, desk copy requests. Okay. So, Gabe, you are such a wide reader. So you say you prefer fiction, historical fiction and mysteries, but do you want to talk about, before we get into some of the books that you're loving, just like, the areas that you cover and also your love for libraries, which, I can read the bio, but I think it's kind of cool if you just speak to it a bit.
So I grew up in East LA, Boyle Heights section of East LA, right on the fringes. It was basically Mexican-American neighborhood, a lot of first, second generation Chicanos. And my sister, who's a big influence in my life, my older sister by 4 years, was in fourth grade. I was in kindergarten. And the next year, sometime in point in time when I was in the first grade, they took the field trip to the library, the Malabar Branch Library on Wabash and Evergreen. This great old brick building with exposed beams and these great wooden floors. It was this wide open, 2 big rooms. And that's where I spent, from 6 to 14, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, however many books I could carry. I'd check out of the library. I remember, so I was like, she was in the 5th grade and they took the field trip, and she got a library card, brought home an application for me. My mom filled it out, and I was like, see ya, man, I'm gone. I'm at the library. So I have some really fond memories about that particular library. And the big, beautiful downtown LA library that we used to talk to my dad into taking us on Saturdays. If my mama were, he'd drop us off at the big downtown library. And that's where I discovered Bennett Cerf and limericks and other interests, poetry, I guess. So I had a lot of fun. And, I think I was one of the first million people to check out Where the Wild Things Are in 1965.
Wow,
It
that's
published
so
in
cool.
64. That was like in the stack of the first books. The one book I remember and I checked it out over and over again as a
Did you?
6 and 7-year-old. So, and then here I am. I got lucky. I got hired at Romans minimum wage when I was in college. I was working at a grocery store for like $7.25 an hour, but working part time out by USC and South Central. And then I was always looking at the want. I think I worked at Harper for 10 years before I stopped checking the want ads every day. Back when newspapers were the source. Anyways, there was this minimum wage job, but it was 40 hours, and I jumped on it, and they hired me because Ed Fitzpatrick, God bless Ed Fitzpatrick, said, you seem to like you want this job, not just a job, but you want this job. And I had applied like at every Walden's and Dalton's and Crown in everywhere since I was applying for work. And so this one stuck. And then they had me managing a store 4 years later, or 6, 7 months later. And they helped me, learn the business because it's an independent bookstore. And you unpack the books, you shelve the books, you pull the returns, you check inventory. As crude as it was back then, we used to have card files. So you used to have like every book had an inventory card and every book had an order card. So you literally start I never had fiction because I was one of the grunge workers. I had business and travel, which were subsection after subsection after subsection, and huge sections at Romans. And we'd literally like 2 weeks out of the month, you'd be counting books. And then you'd pull the inventory card and you'd phone it in and hope you got the books. It was halcyon days, man. It was primitive.
That's fabulous, though. I mean, it's that's of its time.
Yeah,
Its
and that's, as much as I love this job, there's nothing better than being on the floor of an independent bookstore. Maybe any bookstore. I've never worked in a chain, but of a bookstore. Walking into a bookstore first thing in the morning is like the greatest thing. There, people are buzzing. You're in town. It's really a fun job just to be out there putting books in people's hands, which is
Yeah.
essentially what I do every day.
and
So,
and what librarians do, so they get what you're saying, because and what we do in a sense. I mean, it's the coolest thing. It's like completes the conversation after you've read the book and then connected with somebody else.
exactly.
Major disappointment when you say, "Oh my God, you got to read this book. You're gonna love it so much," and they're like, "It was all right." Like, no, you have to love it like I love it.
You gotta, yeah, no, it's funny. It's subjective. I remember recommending Robert Parker to someone I was dating one time, and then she was like, everything that was wrong with Robert Parker. I'm like, literally every one of those reasons that you saw as a negative is a reason that I read Robert Parker.
And then you broke up.
Spencer books. Couldn't last.
Of course not.
Couldn't last that way. No, too different.
Oh, yeah.
Too different points of view.
That's the dividing line right there, my friend.
As opposed to when I met Deborah, and this is the last anecdote I'll tell because I'm sure people got stuff to do.
Okay.
It was her bookshelf that she had a copy of Animal Dreams, probably my favorite Barbara Kingsolver book. Barbara and I go way back. We were both kids in the biz, traveling up and down the West Coast and the Southwest. So she had that on her shelf. She had Weetsy Bat on her shelf, which I just loved when we published that initially. And Francesca's also a very good friend of mine. And then she had Ode to Billy Joel, the novelization by Herman Rausch of the movie, which I checked out of the library like a bunch of times as well after, and it saw the movie later on, but or saw the movie eventually on made for TV thing. So it was, and there was something. And Diva by Delacourt, which no one will remember from the '80s, but very avant-garde French.
What was it?
Diva by Delacourt. They were sort of funky. He did about 3 or 4 books that translate over to the U.S. Very mod 1980s. Think Breathless with Richard Gere with a little more European funk.
So these were on Deborah Ginsburg's bookshelf. And that's how you fell in love over that.
It helped. It didn't hurt.
All right, people. We all know this. We know this to be true. Make sure your spines speak of love. We should also put a link into Waiting, paperback. I'm going to put that in there because honestly, it's such a great book. It's called Waiting by Deborah Ginsburg. And it was, when did that come out in hardcover? I'm checking.
21 years ago, 2000.
Yeah, 2000.
August 2000.
It's about Deborah waiting tables. It's amazing. All right, so we've got librarians watching, and thank you for that, Gabe. I love that background, and you are a book lover's delight. You are everything that we all feel. No joke. So Gabe, we talked about possibly having you talk about some books that you're loving from the fall list. There's a couple of winters that you're loving right now. So we'll chime in with you. You're not on the spotlight by yourself, but why don't you just kick us off? We have the jackets up here. We can hear what you have to say about these. And
very, very nice. So where are we starting from? Do you have you're in my order. So the first book I have.
You see that, Gabe? Small Pleasures?
Yep. Okay. Yep, Small Pleasures. So Small Pleasures is one of these, God, look at that jacket.
Isn't that great?
It's such a great jacket. And so this is a little novel that is it's apparently taken the UK by storm, by Claire Chambers, who has written previously, but hasn't been like 20 years since she last wrote a novel, apparently. Excuse me. So when I started reading this, I'm just like, I don't know how this is going to hold up, because the premise is there's a young woman. Our main character, Jean Sweeney, is a reporter, works for a paper in a small town, in a small community. And she receives a note from a young housewife, Gretchen Tilbury, telling her that she has become pregnant and has never even had sex. So, Jean is very, she's, of course, she's not going to believe it right off. It's like, okay, this is obviously, it's a stigmata thing all over again. This stuff doesn't happen. So this woman's out of her mind. But, she's pulled into this world of this family and becomes very involved with this family. And things occur. She finds herself falling in love with the young husband. There's this mystery that keeps pulling you along. There's our characters are a little bit older, so love among middle-aged people comes into play a little bit here. But it's a really weird book to classify and to even discuss, just because this premise is just throws you for a loop. And the way the book continues and the way she draws a narrative around and brings it full circle is just a really satisfying read. She takes you from being incredibly skeptical at the beginning of this book to a book that you're going to end up talking to people. You're going to be wanting people to read and putting it in people's hands, because you're going to want to have that conversation. You want to know exactly what, you want to see what other people think of what Claire Chambers did with this plot. So it is, it's one of those, again, really unusual books. We have a fairly aggressive print run on it. I think something like 50,000, but it's a book you got to read. It's a book you really want to check out and give a good look and give a read to, because the description just doesn't do it justice. I kind of don't know which way to even attack this book, so I don't give too much away. But just enough said that you do want to give it a look, and I think the UK reviews are pretty solid all the way around. So we're excited. I think this is one of those books that we had a lot of people loving at sales conference when we sit around talking about books. This is one of those that, like, people got caught by surprise, because we have these big books and these huge authors and favorites and so forth. And so when something sneaks in through the back door, it's fun. It's
those back doors, those books like this are the ones that we live for, honestly. Right. It's just that really cool thing that there's some really wild books that are coming out that that are just like Chouette, some really different kinds of books,
really provocative books.
Yeah. There's a great behind the book piece that's on Edelweiss, if anyone wants to check this out, that the author wrote, behind the book essay. So I don't know if you mentioned that, Gabe, but anyway,
I did.
Go on Edelweiss. Here it is.
It'll be, in paperback, it'll be a huge book club book. So I think people will be clamming for it. But I think we'll have a nice setup for this. We're excited.
All right. What you got next?
Another one of these books that we're really aggressive on. We really have aggressive plans for this book, Fault Lines by Emily Itami. This is a book that has got so many things going on. It is a common enough theme: a woman who's dissatisfied with her current life and the direction she takes to shake up her life. So Mizuki is mother of two, is living a very quiet life in Tokyo. She's married to a salaryman. So, it's just kind of like the same thing every day. It's like white bread and peanut butter and jelly every day. Her life just sort of, she plods along with this life. And, it's, her husband makes plenty of money. She's very comfortable. But she finds herself often angry and upset. So she, in a little bit of a shakeup, she ends up having a little a bit of a small affair with another man, and which spurs her to examine her life even further. So this is really a woman who's becoming awake, who's being awakened to not accept the life that she's given, but she's discovers that she's actually capable of. It's up to her to make the changes. So she becomes empowered as the novel progresses. The writing is really strong. The writing is really great. The novel is really well told. It's really well crafted. Tokyo, you just want to go to Tokyo when you finish this book. It may as well be like at least Donna Leon when she writes about Venice, and you just want to end up going to Venice. Tokyo is very, very much a big part of this novel, which I thought was great. I don't know a lot about Tokyo necessarily, but Uh, and you often hear sometimes, the city or the place becomes a character in the novel, but Tokyo is very, very present in this book, which I think adds a whole nother dimension for a whole broaden up the readership of this book. So again, it's another one of those things that you got to take a look at. We're going to have a lot of galleys floating around. So hopefully if you get to sign up for one, check this book out. We got I think a really cool package, the old and the new, which I think shows the direction of our characters' growth in a little way. It's a great package. Another book that I'm really excited about presenting to my accounts, because it's just it's so much to talk about. Again, another book. It's Ann Tyler did that. I don't know, like a third of her books are a woman that leaves her marriage and walks away. Our character doesn't quite go that far, but she does. It's a really it's a tense little drama, but a super satisfying read.
I love this book, and it doesn't take very long to read. You can kind of read it pretty quickly. But like you were saying, it's very like Tokyo is a character, but it's pretty global because she had studied English in another country, and so I don't know, I didn't feel like I felt that Tokyo was a character, but it felt very broad too, like very universal, that she was feeling those things. Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
It's a beautiful book.
And
Suki's
funny.
voice is really great. Yeah, I mean, it is told through her viewpoint, so she does have very fascinating internal monologues, and it's really cool. So I echo both of you. And someone asked if this is an e-galley yet. It's not, and I'm hoping it will be very soon. I'll check in on that and reach out to anyone who wants to read, of which there are many at this point, thanks to Gabe's presentation. So yeah, I'll reach out, Vicky, and let everyone know.
Yep. Surprised it's not up there. All right. Anyway, this one, like I said, Chris has presented this now today too. We were speaking to the was it Louisiana, Chris, that you did this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So it's take it away, Gabe.
I mean, this is a book that's got everything in it. I think it's a really the opening scene of this book is very much it's a very stark stalking scene. A man stalking a tiger, and he's being stalked, kind of. And so there's a lot of drama. It is set during the decade as Korea is becoming an fighting to become an independent republic. And like I said, it starts off very stark. I thought when I started reading this book, I'm thinking, oh, this is really like a guy's book. It's really got all this hint of danger, and there's this threat, and then it turns into maintaining that. We're introduced to the really main character of the story, who is this young woman who becomes a courtesan, and is trained to be a courtesan, goes to courtesan school, and she inhabits her world. So it's a world of sort of seeing the nation come together, but the disparities in the culture, the disparities in the population. She, as a courtesan, lives in a particularly small bubble that is very privileged. It's very intellectual, and then there are the revolutionaries. There's the government soldiers. There are a lot of people that are trying to make profit on the war, on the situation. So the cast of characters is really diverse, and the direction that the book takes. I started thinking, it's going to be a little bit like when it started changing direction. I thought, oh, Good Cop is going to be the Memoirs of a Geisha. But I think that audience, because of the exoticness of the telling and the exoticness of the location. But I found this even a much more powerful book than that. That was a really beautiful, big, epic novel of this small world. And this is in that sense, this is that as well. It's really an epic telling, populated with really wonderful characters that are each individually cut out, and they're very distinctive, and they each, reflect part of the culture that's existing at the time, and echoes of things that are going on today also. But I think this is another book for the. I mean, it's just a really, I think, literary novel. I think of the best sort. Um, I think uh, you know, I'm trying to find a comp on the adult side, but it's just, people who like to read really solid, good fiction are going to come to this. I think people who like exotic books will come to this, exotic settings. Like I said, I think the memoirs of the geisha audience will come to this. I think men and women will come to this book. It's really got a really diverse readership because there's just so much going on in this package. It felt like a 600-page book.
Wow.
There was so much going on here.
Yeah, a couple of folks are saying that it reminds them of what was it? Wait, no, I just missed it.
Night Tiger.
Night Tiger. Thank you.
I never read Night Tiger.
Nor I. So let's just say it is.
I'll put it on my list. I'll put it on my notes.
See, it's sharing. That's what's so wonderful about
Exactly.
this, right? Librarians, we're
Exactly.
always asking librarians, what do they love? So thank you, Gabe. Also interest in these books now, Gabe. But Chris did
And
a
that package is
job
so
today.
amazing too. I
Isn't
love
it?
that package. It just says so much.
It does. As Chris Connolly says, come for the jacket, stay for the story.
Exactly.
Right? So cool.
And often you look at the jacket, you're like, that doesn't have anything to do with the book. But it's like, this has like literally like everything to do with the book.
Yeah, cool. All right, next up.
We have the Bourdain, but we
The
don't have a cover
Bourdain.
for that.
So that is so early in the works and such a top secret project that we don't have anything to show you. But it was written by a Laura Woolever has worked with Tony for like a decade, I think. She worked alongside Tony a lot. She worked with him on his TV shows. She spent a lot of time with Tony. She helped write the last book that we did. So she's been involved in Tony's world for a really long time. So this is literally an oral biography with some revelations. She interviews his wife. She interviews his best friend who was with him when he committed suicide. They were on a trip together in Spain or someplace. And I can never remember his name because it's such a weird name, but ordinary name.
Yeah.
And so everybody, she's an insider. So she's got access to everybody in the family. So we've just released a Tony Bourdain like last week, 10 days ago or something like that. And we like immediately ran out of stock. So there's a lot of interest in Tony Bourdain. That book is more to do with his travels and his cooking shows. This is a full-on oral biography, including a lot of interviews with everybody, all kinds of great stuff. He was absolutely a character. He had a heroin addiction early on. He was a badass chef. He hit the scene hard with Kitchen Confidential. I mean, that book, I remember when Dan Halpern bought that book and we got it, somebody at Bloomsbury published it in hardback. Jan jumped on it in paperback and we sold a ton of books. And Tony has produced a really great cookbook for us. And he was one of those people who you really, really miss, who impacted a lot of people's lives, even through the television tube. He opened a lot of worlds for a lot of people. We liked Tony. Tony published Kitchen Confidential when Waiting, about a month before Waiting published. So Deborah was on the road with Tony a lot. They were on panels at like book festivals. They wrote together for a couple of blog sites, the chef and the waitress. So we have some fond memories of Tony, and he's just beloved. I don't find somebody who has a bad thing to say about Tony Bourdain. The people that worked with him have nothing but wonderful things to say about Tony through his show. Editorially, nothing but great things to say about Tony. So he's, he really carved out a niche. He's a bit of a giant at least in the book world and in the food world. But there's a lot of interest in Tony Bourdain. So we're really excited. I haven't seen much on this, but I know it's going to do really, really well.
When his restaurant closed, Lahal, which was just down the street from Harper.
Yeah.
And that just became this you know, I mean, just
The
candles,
shrine there.
a
Yeah.
shrine, candles and flowers and notes and, you know, notes saying how much he changed, what an effect he had on people's lives. It was really something. It was,
It was really amazing. Yeah, I had no idea that he was. I mean, really great guy. I just had no idea he was so universally beloved by everybody that he came in, which is rare.
Yeah.
Because I know there's people that have some not so nice things to say about me down the road. As cool as I am.
they don't have nice things to say about who?
There's people out there who probably don't have nice things to say about me, but
Oh, I don't
not
believe
Tony
that.
Bourdain.
I don't believe that, Gabe. I just don't.
Use of the ground.
You're a nice fella.
So then Postmistress of Paris, which, the World War II craze continues. When are we going to reach saturation point? I don't know. We published Meg Waite Clayton at Harper for a few books in paperback original, and she chugged along, and we were always happy, and she produced a good book every time. And then the last book, Last Train to London, or London Train, gotta keep these titles together. We sold in hardback, and we had like a huge print run, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, like, this is like a huge print run. It was like 200,000. And I'm like, how are we going to get there? And this book just did not stop selling. So I am really happy to have the Postmistress of Paris to walk into my accounts with an even better package than the last book. She's a really great storyteller, commercial storyteller that keeps the readers turning the page. And she has arrived. We've going to be very aggressive plans for this book here, and I think people are going to be clamoring for it, because a lot of people. I can't even tell you how many we've sold of the last book, and the audience is growing. So there are going to be a lot of readers for the Postmistress of Paris. This book deals with a young woman who's an heiress, has got a lot of money, and helps artists escape the Nazis. So there, again, a lot of tension, and another big epic kind of a World War II drama, a step above. So give it a look. I really think this package is going to get a lot of people picking it up off the shelves and the tables. But a good storyteller. We're excited.
We've had her on our Facebook Live, and she's just wonderful, and we'll have her on again for this book. But you're right, she is a great storyteller. She's very, very interesting, and she's as good in person as she is on paper. Do you know what I mean? I mean, whether she's writing it or speaking it, she's really wonderful. Yeah, we love her. She's fantastic.
She's great. She's really good friends of one of my booksellers, Linda Wackofflin Feigl at Pages, a bookstore in Manhattan Beach. They used to work together when Linda was in high finance and Meg was a lawyer. So completely different lives here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, download a galley. It's on Edelweiss, you guys. All right. What else
We
we
make
got?
it easy.
Hmm?
We make it easy.
I make it easy.
And then Louise Erdrich, another book that we don't have a jacket for, because you got to have just the right package for Louise Erdrich. Virginia sat through a lot of meetings where we talk about Louise Erdrich. We brought Louise Erdrich over to Harper 30 years ago.
Yeah.
We took her to a cheesy Polynesian restaurant to celebrate in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Really, really cheesy night of smoke and jugglers and all that supposed to be Polynesian stuff. So we've been together a long time with Louise, but I met her back in like 1985, 86 at the LA Times Book Festival. Before the LA Times Book Festival, it was the LA Times Book Prizes, where Love Medicine, her first novel, won the LA Times Book Prize. She won the National Book Critics Circle Award for that book. And I remember I was a poor bookseller at the time, making minimum wage. So I could only buy one book, and I bought Evan S. Cannell's book and what William Meredith poetry book, who had just had a stroke. So I was like, his days are numbered. And I didn't have enough for Love Medicine. I always kick myself for that choice because I think Louise Erdrich is like really one of the great American novelists, along with the Steinbecks and the Hemingways and the that lot there. I think she's a writer of, I mean, she's won a Pulitzer. She's been nominated for a couple of Pulitzers, but National Book Awards, NBCCs, everything. You know, she's an amazing storyteller. If you've never read Louise, I would say maybe start with The Last Report of the Miracle at Little Knoll Horse, which is just, and then you move on to the Master Butcher Singing Club and that cast of characters. She repeats her characters in a lot of these books, and they're just, she's got such a great wit. She's such a great storyteller, and I'm hard pressed to find, you know, a more important American author than Louise Erdrich. So I always have a lot to say about her, and she should be treated with much respect. So this new book is a little bit more of a fun, you know, Louise has a bookstore, Birchbark Books in Minneapolis, I guess. And she's owned it for a lot of years. And she does what she does. It's a small curated store. And so this book is set in a bookstore. And it is a young woman who learns to read in jail and opens up this, Tookie opens up this, you know, community kind of a bookstore setting. So it's, and it's a little bit of a magical realism infused into this book, as one of the characters in the store actually dies and haunts the bookstore. And that is sort of, she's an impetus for growth in the community and growth in the characters in the book. It's a, you know, pretty complex story between the women Tookie who owns the bookstore, and she's in love with the cop who like arrested her. So that's what Louise does. It's kind of straightforward, and it's not quite that straightforward. So she doesn't, you know, she's an important author who doesn't fill your head with, she has a lot of fun with her books. She's not so full of herself that, you know, she needs to get that award and I got to do this and that. She has, and then in this book, she has a lot of fun. So it is, the setting is terrific in a bookstore. You can't go wrong with that. The storyteller is Louise Erdrich. There's a ghost, there's a little bit of magic. And I think it's probably something that Louise has wanted to, as she digs into her roots, she's always done this. Who she is and where she's from has always been the driver of her narratives, I think. But in this case, it's a little more, even more personal in her love of books and her examination of her culture. And I think telling this story from the netherworld, which she's never really quite done, which is also part of the culture, I think makes this for a really exciting publication event. And I think, again, I think we're going to get a lot of, you're going to get a lot of new kind of readers for Louise. I think people who don't necessarily read like really, you know, really serious, important fiction will come to this. And I'm hoping the package will reflect the kind of book that it is. And then you'll find out, apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently Birchbark Books door is painted blue, and there's a reason for that. And you'll find out if you read the book.
Wait, Birchbark's book's door is painted blue. Why?
It's blue for a reason.
Oh, okay. This is new.
So it's in the book.
Okay. Okay, good.
It's in the book. So we're excited. I'm always excited about a new Louise Erdrich publication. Hope she comes to LA when we're back live.
Oh my God, she's the nicest person.
But she's really a sweetheart.
Yeah. She spoke at the Public Library Association a bunch of years ago and just took it down. She's so great.
She does.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought I had one more. The Cat Who Saved Books.
Oh.
That didn't show up there. Oh, Book of Non-Existent Words.
There we go.
There it is.
Have your selection. Do you want me to go back to?
Yeah, let's go back to the. I think that's the last book after that I
back
had.
to Snowflake or
no. Before you just popped it up. It was the Cat Who Saved Books, and then the Book of Non-Existent Words.
Okay.
So I'll talk about the Cat Who Saved Books first. This is one of our from our VA imprint, which is our Works in Translation imprint. And I started catching up to these books kind of late. It was always like, we've got their hardbacks, their Works in Translation. And that's what I went out and I started selling them. And then I would always read them too late after I'd sold them. And it's like, wow, this is a really good book. So I'd be like, you know, running around talking, you really got to check this out. There's some really wonderful books in this series that tend to be overlooked. I think people expect books in translation to be in paperback for the most part. That's sort of been traditionally how they've been published. if you have a broad list. But we want to give the books as much life as many lives as we can. And The Cat Who Saved Books is a book that's taken Japan by storm. It is a magical cat. And it works, to me, when somebody once asked me if I read a particular book, because that I was selling and I started it. It was it's been one of our best selling books of all time. And my comment was, when the goat started talking, you kind of lost me. So anthropomorphizing, not a big fan of, but every once in a while it's done really well. And in this book, it's just a magical, the book I'm going to use as a comp is A Never Ending Story. And it's so not that. There's no dragons, there's no fantastical travel. But I think the reader who read that as a kid or who read it as an adult will love this book, because it's about a young man, high schooler, who inherits his grandfather's used bookstore, and he's just gonna close it down. There's nothing he's gonna do with it. He's gonna close it down. But then he's visited by this talking cat who is on a quest to save books. So save books from unworthy book owners. So there are these people who hoard books but never read them. So he's got his eye on this particular guy who buys a lot of books, but they just sit on his shelf, spines uncracked, no bends in the jackets, no coffee stains on the page. They just sit there as decorations. And so he wants to rescue those books. And then there's this other vile person who, steals like maps and cuts things out of books and sells them piecemeal. So he needs to be stopped. So those books need to be rescued. So those are some of the situations that arise here. And I think we got, a really provocative jacket. The story just takes you away. Honestly, it starts, you're in it, and you just get absorbed into this world, and you just don't want to stop till you get done with it. So a great little addition. Like I said, it was a big hit in Japan, and I think we're going to have some success here with this. It's a beautiful book all the way around. It's definitely for the book lovers. Definitely for book lovers.
That's we were saying before, it's got to be a poster. I mean,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I mean, come on, bookstore cats, the whole thing.
Yeah, so many comments, so many people in the comments section just saying like, Barbara Jenko, cats, books, ghosts. What could be bad? Yeah, so much love for this. Thanks for. I'm so glad you talked about this one, Gabe.
We're excited, and then I think the last book will be the Book of Non-Existent Words, which I just love because, I grew up in a multi-language world, and I had a friend, Robert, who used to always joke about, he'd be over at my house and he'd hear people speaking in Spanish. Te vas aquí, allá, y no te vas allá, y de ahí te metes en el 605 freeway y te sigues hasta la Beverly Boulevard. And he would just crack up how, and then amongst that, you get Spanglish growing up in the hood, people mixing, blending words. My son was a big word meister, wordsmith. He grew up mixing English and Spanish words. And people do it all the time, and some people hate it. Some people, it's not in the dictionary, you can't say it. Other people like to create language. I always harken back to Alexander. I think it's Alexander Pope who made a quote about that. You have to create the language. We're part of the creation of the language. And language isn't created by academia. Language is created by the rappers, by the people on the street. I'm around a lot of book people. Don't say conversate around a lot of people, but some people say conversate now. So there's a lot of words that pop up. And what our author does here is he brings together his imagination, and he is finding words that he thinks need to be invented and need to be passed around. And so he's doing his part to grow the language, and he's pushing for that movement. And he does this in this really beautiful, fun, energetic telling. And it's infused with these really wonderful illustrations. So this is a book, I think, for definitely a book lovers of words. If you have a poet in your life, I bet they love this kind of a book. If you've got an academic in your life, I think this is a great little book that has got some readers, I think, out there. I just was really entranced by this book, and it's just such a lovely piece. like talking back about like the never ending story. I didn't love the never ending story necessarily. Fantasy is not a huge fantasy reader. I've tried. I thought The Hobbit was all right. But he does some good stuff here. I think it's just I think it's a really fun, engaging look at language, how language is formed, the liberties that we can take with the language, and let's all do our part and grow the language. So I think it's a great gift item. It'll be out for the fall, but you got to check it out. It's beautiful.
Awesome. Beautiful.
And I think that was it.
We have Lainey, Chris, do we have any others? What let's see.
Yeah, we have a few on the list, Gabe, that we didn't get to. Is there anything that you
Well,
just
we
have to
didn't talk
chat
about
about?
Wiley, did we?
Oh, I didn't talk about Wiley, dude.
That's on the list.
Oh, sorry, that's on my list. We do have to
Hey-o.
talk about Wiley Cash. So Wiley, we've been publishing for a few years at Harper. This is his fourth book. We were his original publisher. Land More Kind and Home bowled us all over. It was such a terrific book. His second book I thought was a lot of fun. His last book, just again, really wonderful reviews. The Last Ballad, which was all about labor and the history of labor. This is another different book from Wiley, and I think it's more to his style. It's sort of a combination between Land More Kind and Home and his second book, which was more of a fun caper novel almost. I think that would be his second book would be a really, really fun movie to make for some director out there. But When Ghosts Come Home is all about life as it exists in the South today. There is I guess the opening scene is a plane crashes in the small North Carolina town, and there's the body found, and then nobody's found at the crash site when everybody gets there. There's nobody there except a dead young black man who's the son of a political activist. So speculation starts as to who or what his part in all of this was, and he's the only hint of evidence that they found. So you're assuming it's drugs, and his involvement in it, and of course the community becomes divided. It's part of the community. He's definitely a drug trafficker. The other part of the community take his side to let's try to figure out what's wrong. Who would just kill one of our citizens? I think this is for the more. I think what Greg Iles has done in the past. These big, fat, satisfying regional. It's not a police procedural, but it is a thriller. I think it's the kind of thing that they're doing really well on television these days in these small series. A lot of that justified audience, people that like something that's hard hitting. So while he doesn't pull any punches here, he really is bringing a community that is in turmoil. The sheriff has issues with his family life. His married daughter comes home to stay, so he's sort of in this personal crisis. He's got this mystery going on here, and then the town's blowing up in the background, and there's just like one of him. So what does he do? So Wiley handles it. He's a terrific writer. And I think he handles it really deftly, and gives us a really another big satisfying book. And as I said, I think that's the Southern Gothic-y crime novel. I think this sort of fits that bill. He always writes a little bigger than that. I think Wiley is very concerned with what's right and doing what's right. Wiley won't go out. He's not going with the flow. He's not going with the crowd. If he sees something wrong, Wiley is at the forefront. So he's not taking any prisoners. He doesn't put up with anybody's nonsense. You tell an untruth around Wiley, you're going to hear about it. So Wiley is the same. It's the same thing with this book. He's just telling it like he sees it, and he's not pulling any punches. He's not worrying about anybody's feelings. You know, you're a racist, you're a racist. There's racism involved here. There's a big issue in this book. And he brings that up to and along with the personal issues that also, he hits. So he hits on it's the universals. He hits on all those universals: love, loss, um, all that is that encompasses a life in this really tight narrative. So check him out. I think he's an author who's really, always happy to talk in front of anybody. I'm sure you can get him into libraries and library groups and stuff like that, because he's a really nice guy, and I think a really terrific writer. And I'm hoping we have more.
Well, I couldn't agree more. All three of us are on the Wiley bandwagon. In fact, I didn't want to make you nervous, but he's actually, you had 2 books left. That one, you have one more to talk about on your list, Snowflake. But before we get to that, if you can get to that, I
forget it. It's my first book.
That's okay. Wiley is in the chat room, or at least he was in the chat room. I saw his name pop up, so I hope he's still here. But he was also a speaker at Library Journal's Day of Dialogue, which people can still register for now. It's free, and go check that out. He was absolutely terrific, and also he's going to be on Facebook Live. He's going to be interviewed by his editor David Highfill on June 8th. So that's going to be super cool. And we'll have information on that we'll send out. Now let's see. Folks have some questions. Love meeting Wiley on his book tour. The Last Ballad. Okay, Lillian Dabney really wants to hear about Snowflake, and you will. That is the last title. God, there's so many comments, and there's so much love here for you, Gabe. People want to wrap you up and take them home. Barbara Jenko says, Mr. Riley, you're awesome. It must be a treat to be sold by you.
Well, that's awful sweet.
Barbara Jenko is awesome. That was great. So we'll be back about June 8th with Wiley and his editor, David Highfill. And so Snowflake is I think the last one on the list. Yeah.
The last book on the list.
All
and I have, I talked about John Boyne earlier. I've been on an Irish writer kick lately, and probably because there's just been a lot of really good Irish novelists publishing in the last 3 years. There's just so much great literature out there from the Emerald Isle. And I love it. I just have always loved Irish fiction. One of my very first class in college was a short story class, and we read some really amazing short story writers, and James Joyce among them. And it sort of got me onto Frank O'Connor, what a great short story writer he is. There's just, again, plays, anything. Irish writers. We had a guy named Declan Hughes who writes these beautiful novels that nobody can read because they're super violent, but he's just the most beautiful writer. And you could hear the Irish lilt in his voice. And that is what you get with Louise Neal. And it is one of those books that it's like one of these literary blow-ups really quickly. She wrote a short story that really took off. I think she's super young. So she wrote a short story that really took off, and it's got signed for this book that's been receiving huge attention. And it is, it's like every plot has been told like a zillion times. There's not a new story under the sun. And Louise's story here is young Debbie is 18, grew up on her family farm, and has a chance to go to college, and she's admitted into Trinity. And then things get in the way, and life gets in the way. She gets to Trinity. She's neither impressed by her college friends or the college crowd. She's not impressed by them at all. She's not really affected by them. She doesn't really seem to fit in at any level. She doesn't understand them. So she's got there's this culture shock as she goes there, as she heads out to college. So this has been done. I can't even tell you how many Irish novels and mysteries, whatever it had, begin with the premise of the young kid who's got a chance to get out, and then it gets pulled back into town. But she has a great cast of characters. Her mother has these psychic dreams. Her father swears that his mother is psychic, And at some point, Debbie is plagued by dreams as well. That affects her now, and changes her life. And then things at home change, so her life that is projected to be this really straight linear path takes a turn. And what I loved about it is that's just how life is. You know, everybody's got this sort of, you've got this plan. You're going to be out of college. You're going to get married. You're going to have 2.3 kids. You're going to buy a house. And for some, it works out that way. And most of the time, it doesn't. You know, you take a turn somewhere. Life kicks you in the teeth, and she just handles it really. She handles it brilliantly. You know, her father's a character. Her brother Billy's a great character. Her mom, obviously, with her quirks, and she creates this. Louise creates this really, really wonderful community of people that rally around our heroine, our protagonist. But I think it's a story it's a pretty affecting story. I think when you finish this book, you're gonna feel a little something. And as I said, the writing, you could hear the language, you could hear the voice, the lilt of the island in the writing, and she just puts you in another place. I think that's the kind of book that I think we really like. Automatic, I think, for book clubs, fans of Irish writers, which Sebastian Barry's just published another book to great acclaim. There's just a lot of stuff out there going on. So I think she, her life, apparently her life is that she's a small town girl who got really lucky. I think she signed like a 6-figure deal. So the Irish know what they're doing with fiction. If the Irish are paying big bucks, and she's getting paid that kind of money in the UK, that's a find. So it's somebody, there's definitely people are excited about this book. So give it a look. I don't see that it's available as an e-galley yet, but hopefully soon we can get it up there. And like I said, she's back at the dairy farm. Probably a good place to write.
Yeah, I think that was your list.
Yeah, sorry I took so long.
No, it's wonderful.
I think the consensus with our viewers is they could listen to you all day. So Gabe, if that's something you want to start up, just let us know. There's always room for another program starring
Very
you.
nice.
We can talk offline, but
I love
everyone's very
librarians.
appreciative.
You have been so supportive of first of all, thank you for doing all of that, Gabe. That was fantastic. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when we sit and listen to you talk about books. We're having the same reaction. The librarians are having the same reaction that we have. And that's just, you bring, of course it's all subjective, but you bring so much insight and your own, I don't know, just your own love for these books and intrigue, and these books that are, treasures, that they're, we used to have this thing called Under the Radar, Over the Moon. And in a way, that's what this is. Those are the books that we really want to get out there. And so this was lovely for you to take the time to talk to librarians about these books. Of course, the Louise Erdrich's, that sentence, that's going to be amazing. And then there are other books that just, benefit from you and from your deep reads of these books and appreciation for them. So we thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. And you've been to ALA many times, and you've been to libraries, and you've just been wonderful. So seriously, I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for us and for librarians, and for this today. It was just wonderful. A whole lovely
Always
hour.
fun. Always fun. Again, soft spot for librarians. They let me check out whatever I wanted when I was a kid.
Well, let's see. Is there anything else, you guys, that we want to make sure, if anybody has any questions, or if there's anything, if there's nothing else, we will say goodbye for today. But I just want to make sure before we do that, but your book talks are compelling. They love you. Wonderful books. Wonderful Gabe. Wonderful hosts. Aw. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Casey Davis loved it. So many great books and book lovers. Makes it easy for us to decide what books to buy next for our library. And then Lily and Dabney in Seattle says, no, we want you to go on, Gabe. Okay, we're just going to start the Gabe fan club.
I like the Seattle library system. That's my world. King County, Seattle City.
Yeah.
Great jobs up there. Amazing library systems up there. Seattle does so much funding for their libraries. It's so great.
I know. They are really wonderful.
Seattle's really wonderful.
Yeah. And you're really wonderful. And the link to Deb's book, Waiting, is in there. It's just it says everything that book is still just cranking along after
20 years
all these
later.
years,
Yeah.
because it's such a great memoir about waiting tables and what she learns about herself and what she learns about people. And it's just, as someone who used to sling hash, I totally appreciated that book.
Yeah, it did real well with. It did real well in backs of restaurants. They just got passed around. Didn't get a lot of sales. It got passed around a lot.
It's good for
But
book
libraries
clubs,
did
too.
really well. And libraries have been really great with Deborah. Actually, they've been really great with her supporting her books in the past. So thank you for that on behalf of her, because she's gotten a lot of pickup from libraries.
Wow. She's a great writer, a lovely person. Please tell her hello.
I'll send her
Gabe,
anything.
we actually have a question. If you can't remember it it's fine. They can go back and listen. But Rose wanted to know the 4 books that were on your wife's bookshelf that you had mentioned earlier.
It was Animal Dreams by Barbara Kingsolver, which is probably her sappiest book, but it was like her 3rd novel. It was the novel that broke her out. You know, she was on the road for like a year and a half with that book, so we were on the road a lot together. And but it was the book that took, with like a 50,000 print run that sold zillions of copies. And so then that was one of them. The other one was Weetsy Bat by Francesca Leah Block, which is a YA novel. I did not expect to see that on her shelf because she's kind of no nonsense. And the other was Diva by Delacorte. Those are from the early 80s. I would always pick one of those up for my friend Val. She had anytime Delacorte had a new book, very French avant-garde. And then the novelization of that cheesy made-for-TV movie with Robbie Benson, Ode to Billy Joe. That the song is there. But I read that when I was, 9, 10 years old. I was like, what, romance? And I don't know. It took me away as a kid. Maybe I was 12 or something when that came out. But,
Robbie Benson, the best. So those are,
So those were the 4 that were, and they were all together in a little bun, so I didn't have to like stare around too much.
That says a lot about Deborah. That's quite a grouping.
Yeah, it's a really odd grouping. That's why I was kind of like, all things I'm familiar, really well familiar with. So I was kind of like, who has? I mean, Ode to Billy Joe. Come on, ain't nobody got that on their shelf. She does. I mean, come on. It's just like, it's so not her either. It's like she's so serious. She went to Reed College. She's very, type A. Her desk is always like,
man.
We'll move her pen once in a while just to freak her out. So she doesn't have time for a lot of nonsense. She won't watch a sitcom. It's got to be a really good sitcom because they're just like lame. So she got a lot of things, but good book, good taste in books as well.
Yeah. And fellas.
Obs.
Obs. Well, listen, all. Thank you all for joining in. And Gabe, a special thanks to you.
Thanks for having me. It's fun. I love doing this stuff.
This was wonderful. Just wonderful.
Always fun. Thank y'all. Hey, librarians.
See you next time.
See you guys.